Through my work as an academician and as a dear friend of Muslims and Jews alike, I have become fascinated by the never-ending Arab-Israeli conflict. I have made it my lifetime goal to teach my students, my protégés, how to help us to create a balance of interest, not an imbalance of power in the Middle East.
القدس هي عاصمة دولة فلسطين، شاء من شاء وأبى من أبى.
The connection between the Jewish people and Jerusalem cannot be denied.
We must help Palestinians and Israelis alike in order that they, together, without our getting involved, will oversee the creation of a Palestinian state. My name is Carl Hobert. My career is based on teaching youth in their formative years how to prevent conflict and how to communicate effectively with others of very different backgrounds. And it really started when I was a child in Minneapolis. And I was attending schools where they were experimenting with what we call busing. And busing means you bring children over from other parts of a city like Minneapolis to your area of the city, and you mix cultures. So I started to see coexistence, and that started me on the path of working towards peaceful coexistence and getting everyone to get along. I think that conflict, as Dwight Eisenhower said before he died, is thanks in great part to the military-industrial complex that we have created in the United States and around the world, where military, industry, and the government, especially in Washington, D.C., all work together to try and create conflict as opposed to prevent it. But I tell students, think about doctors who for years didn't necessarily want to help prevent cancer because they wouldn't make as much money taking the tumors out. They wouldn't make as much money On September 11th, I lost a former student, Teddy Maloney. Teddy feels the shake of the first tower being hit. A microphone is held by somebody who's basically directing the second tower and the evacuation of the second tower, gets on the microphone and says, "No one should leave Tower 2 because things are falling. You could get injured or killed." Ted says to his entire staff, "Everyone get out, I don't care what they say."
You okay? Go ahead in. Go ahead in. Are you okay? Okay. Is everyone okay?
All of them lived. He died. Because the plane hit below his floor, and his wife will never forget getting the phone call from him after the second tower is hit, saying, "I don't know if I'm going to make it." She gives birth to their second child 6 weeks later, names the child, even though it was the second daughter, Teddy.
North Korea is a regime arming with missiles and weapons of mass destruction. Iran aggressively pursues these weapons and exports terror. Iraq continues to flaunt its hostility toward America and to support terror. States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world. The United States of America will not permit the world's most dangerous regimes to threaten us with the world's most destructive weapons.
Between losing Teddy and what President Bush said, it reached a pinnacle. And I'll never forget that night where I said, I'm going to construct an axis of hope. One week after that, I held my first conference for high school students from around Massachusetts on the Arab-Israeli conflict. So I started writing case studies on conflicts and then allowing the students to use those case studies to simulate negotiation exercises to bring peace to a certain part of the world in classrooms. So Axis of Hope is now set up here in Boston as its own nonprofit organization. So even though ours seems based at Boston University, it is completely separate from Boston University. Helping kids to prevent the conflict through what I call the vitamin C's to prevent the cancer of conflict: communication, comprehension, compromise, compassion, and coexistence. We've got to teach those things to kids in their formative years, because if we can teach those vitamin C's, they can go on to much more effectively prevent a cancer of conflict. So I would like to continue our discussion today, if we could, about the Who's Jerusalem case study, focusing on the Arab-Israeli conflict, the case study that we've been refining now for several weeks, that we will also be using tomorrow at the Boston English Academy for 4 hours tomorrow afternoon. So I'd like to start the discussion now. Arab League, Hamas. In the English high school in Boston, the oldest public high school in the United States, we have already sent the history department chairperson the Who's Jerusalem case study with the history section. That's section 1. Section 2, they read the chronology since the year 1900. For example, what happened in 1967 with the Six-Day War? What happened in 1973? What happened in 2000 when the Second Intifada started in September? So not only do they get the history, but they get an outline of important dates. The third section is a glossary. Who is Benjamin Netanyahu? Who is Fatah? What is Hamas? What's the difference between Likud and Labor? It's all clarified for students. I give them 20 minutes as groups to read their confidential instructions quietly and then to come up with what we call a 2-minute summary statement. How do you decide as a group who's going to be the secretary and write down this 2-minute summary? Who is the spokesperson going to be? And what are the words going to be? That in and of itself is the first round of negotiations.
We are the Arab League, and we are committed for the justice of Palestinians and their people. We want justice for Palestine and punishment for Israel for what they've done.
This is Israel's responsibility.
Thank you very much.
We also want the Israeli army to be removed immediately from the new state and the capital of Palestine.
We move from there to round 2 of negotiations. You create what's called diplomatic pods. So imagine 3 diplomatic pods of those 6 tables. Likud comes together with Labor. Hamas comes together with Fatah. The Arab League comes together with the Quartet. And what you say to them is, you're now with another group, 3 pairs in this room. You have exactly 20 minutes to focus on Jerusalem and come up with 3 things that you agree on. 1, the security of Jerusalem. 2, the healthcare system in Jerusalem. 3, education. Good luck. You've got 15 minutes to work on those 3 points.
So you would have 2 separate schools. Palestinian school and Israeli.
So what can you offer them instead?
I told you, a hospital in the same region that's a Jew hospital, maybe like 5 miles down the street.
It doesn't matter what religion you are. If you're hurt, you want help. It doesn't matter what religion you are.
Like right now, you can't even...
If the Israelis give the Palestinians their freedom, the Palestinians should be able to govern themselves by providing the security for their people.
As far as education, we decided that there should be segregated schools based on religion.
It will be equal. We'll have troops helping both sides.
Okay. Okay, please listen up. This is the last round of negotiations. I know we're getting late right now. Good luck. Go, go, go. Well, imagine when it gets best and you go to your final round of negotiations. No longer are we going to be representing parties. We're going to be representing ideas.
In order for the Palestinians to have total security, they need to have a state.
The Israeli settlements in the eastern Jerusalem has to stop.
We were also talking about Jerusalem, who should take it, because the Likud want it, we also want it. They don't want to give any parts of it, we're not willing to give any parts either.
You will never come to an arrangement of bringing the Palestinians and the Israeli together to start living together and actually learning to like each other.
Peace is a beginning. Once we get peace, it will guide us.
What are you walking away with this afternoon? Yes?
I learned a lot, and I can say I'm gonna walk out of here and still be thinking about this and solutions, and it was a good experience.
I just learned that peace is still possible and we can do something about it.
Now you know. If you empower the students with the ability to negotiate and make decisions, they learn much more effectively. And what they have to do by the end is come up with a letter of recommendation on how to bring more effective peace to the Middle East. We mail it to George Mitchell, our special envoy to the Middle East, Hillary Rodham Clinton, and Barack Obama. They have received so many of these letters that they're now saying, oh my goodness, what's going on here? What are our students starting to learn in schools around the United States? It gets back to Martin Luther King. Educational, civil disobedience, where students are learning about the Middle East and they're putting pressure on our government to create a Palestinian state. I was raised in Minneapolis by a psychologist father and an instructor or teacher mother. They believed that they should not only teach us how to look at our own society and give back to others by doing volunteer work in Minneapolis, but they believed in taking us to different places around the world as well. The life-changing experience for me was our first international trip to France, where I was allowed to use my French, which was not very good at that time, to get hotel rooms, to order meals in restaurants. It was a confidence-building exercise for me. It was also the beginning of my journey to become a global citizen. I went to France when I was 19 years old, and I lived with a family in the Quartier Latin, or the Latin Quarter, and I happened to get this family introduced to me because when I arrived with a big bag of clothing, I had no place to stay and not a lot of money. I walked into the office of Middlebury College, whose program I would be attending, and the phone rang on the director's phone. And the phone call was from a mother who was looking for an au pair who could help teach her two little boys English. The next day I moved in with La Famille Blanchard, or the Blanchard family. They became my second family in the world. I had my own room in a beautiful house with a little jardin that they owned in front of the house. It was truly a beautiful place. They were also a Jewish family, and we have many arguments about the Middle East and about policy vis-a-vis Muslims in France. We respect each other. And what we developed while I was there, studying foreign policy, international relations, political science at l'Institut des Sciences Politiques, was the whole idea of agreeing to disagree. So with my French mother and father, to this day, we agree to disagree on issues.
Hey, Carl. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
How's everything going?
Things going well, thank you.
I wanted to ask you about how everything went at English High.
We had an incredible 4-hour conflict resolution exercise yesterday.
So what's lined up then this month? Which other schools are?
We take this actually to Rwanda, and we leave on June 22nd, and we'll be working with high school students over there, not only with these exercises, but we're going to be taking the students to work with the students that we take from the United States with us to the orphanage called Homophobe.
Terrific, terrific.
So our next stop is Africa.
Children who are going through the education trajectory right now are going to be in charge of this country eventually. They will be our presidents, our senators, our university professors. They are going to be leading this country, and they're going to be influencing and affecting the minds of the next generation after them. So it is absolutely critical that those people have diplomacy training.
And I think it's amazing how you see these birds flying away, you see the U.S. flag up at the top, and it's that whole idea of teaching students in schools here in this country in their formative years how to go in the direction of peace. So much based on Martin Luther King. You start in their young or formative years of life teaching them these ideas through simulation exercises in the classroom.
I mean, he was so influential for you and what you're doing now.
That's right.
So it's interesting that this is where, you know, you pass by this place every day,
and you're reminded of his protégés, or what he would call his disciples. Those were the students or the children that were with him. This is the same thing Axis of Hope is working on, is having more students or proteges or disciples who take the word on. I think the biggest hill to climb was those teachers who kept correcting me saying, this is not helping our students. Number one, do well in those important standardized exams I mentioned before, the SAT, the SAT2, the AP, etc. Number two, what are you creating? Bleeding heart liberals who want to get out and save the world? I thought we were trying to create money makers in our schools who are going to go to the best colleges and the best graduate schools and make the most money and then give it back to our schools. I said, what's more important? Helping to save lives and prevent conflict, or give money back to our fiefdoms? And people would go, what do you mean give money back to our fiefdoms? I said, you tell me what you're creating in education. Most of them don't get it. And I say, you're creating educational fiefdoms. And your walls are getting thicker, and you're forcing the students to stay inside. What I'm doing is I'm drilling holes in those walls. I'm taking that big door you pull up and don't allow people to come across the moat, I'm starting to pull it down so those students can run out and start to do different kinds of things in their formative years of life. One of the things I've asked my students as they're going along in this process, I said, my goal before dying would be for one of you to invite me to come to Oslo. When I'm an old man, I want to walk with a cane down the aisle of the Hotel de Ville or the City Hall so I can sit in the front row because I don't hear very well, and I'll see you be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And that Nobel Peace Prize will come as a result of what you're working toward in terms of peace in the Middle East and creation of a Palestinian state. Hopefully it will happen well before then. That's my goal in my life.